Welcome back, everyone. 皆さん、お帰りなさい。今日は66日目です。It is day 66. I think we're gonna hit the 7 p.m. mark, right? Let's see, 6:22 p.m. There's a chance. If not, we'll continue and push this, right? Do whatever reviews are available. I think, yeah, the day after tomorrow is the second peak, right? The after peak. Let's see. We have 2 here. I don't think I have to write anything here. So we missed the Odentaku in Kakigori, right? Kakigori. And the definition to grow. Oh, and the read, actually. Oh, well, we didn't get a chance to enter the read, but I would probably, because of what I think the term means, I would have chosen u. And ueru, it's okay sounding, but it's hairu, right? Hairu. Okay, so let's get into our review.
Funinki.
Funinki.
小学生
小学生。
分ける。
ける。
私立。
私立。
光る。
光る。
活用。
活用。
治る。
治る。Wait. Yes.
中学生
中学生。To divide something, right? To divide up? To divide out? To divide something? This is where I need to double check myself if I added something or they're going to add something. And I don't know for sure. I want to just stick to divide. Ke. So ke is usually transitive. But this one is let's say this one's both. divide out. It comes back to the whole ending thing, right? Not internalizing endings. Just say to divide. Divide something. Yeah, I added to divide and to separate. Oh, it is transitive. Okay, so it's neither. It's not. It didn't classify as int. Okay. Then I don't have a divide that is intransitive yet. Huh. Oh, to share and to classify is be okay. Do they have anything for the kiru? Think of this way. You separate what you care. Kiru. Care. It doesn't lead to attaching. Yeah, it doesn't lead attaching to its transitive property and adding something, right? You have to remember that you're dividing something and separating something, which will still come into conflict with when they decide to divide and to separate is ascribed to, say, the intransitive verb. Still working on how I would go about this. Right now, this is a problem. Not too big of a problem. It slows me down. Probably a better way to describe it. It's an undesirable slowdown at the moment.
私
私 The near future? In the near future? It's gonna tell you soon. In the near future, I should put the near future. The is gonna whack it. Oh no, it might accept it because there's no it's missing short of the preposition. But different phrases. Phrases out of context in English drops. So there's so many different prepositions and articles here and there you can throw in.
手首
三角形
三角形
近々
近々 Excuse me.
羊
羊 Hmm. 私生活。
私生活。
生活。
川。
川。
考え。
考え。
大きく。
大きく。
人口
人口。
近く
近く。
お茶。
お茶。Vicinity, neighborhood, etc.
前。
前。Substitute. Substitute for.
変わる
変わる。Oops.
「お兄さん」
お兄さん。
「火星」
火星。
作り方
作り方。
「クビになる」
クビになる。
「なくなる」
なくなる。
「木星」
木星。 大きさ like the bigness, largeness. Probably bigness and largeness, but but what was acceptable? I'm gonna lean on bigness or largeness. Dang. I feel like I'm gonna get bopped for this too. Yeah. Let's go with bigness. Oh, no. Buenas noches. Buenas noches. Tanoshi deshita. Ne? Tanoshi deshita. Indeed. Indeed. It was quite a lot of fun because it was so feature rich. Bigness. Oh. It took bigness? Oh, that's interesting. Size. Oh, they changed this recently. Oh, they changed this. Content update. So they legacy the old meaning. They legacy the old meaning and then changed it. Yeah, size is a lot better. I like size. I've been keeping sort of glancing through the content updates, right? I noticed that there are people who are part of the Tofugu group that post content updates. So this one got changed because I clearly remember it was bigness, but that's why I typed bigness. Pretty sure it wasn't size as the primary, but that's a different normalization. I'm gonna say big size. I guess we have to legacy bigness. Largeness. It's kind of like the size of the thing. Like, oh, it's a largeness of size proportion. Like, but yeah. Interesting. I'm pretty sure it wasn't size, but maybe I might be like there is a chance I might be recalling this differently. I remember seeing this though. That's why I typed bigness. But usually when you have bigness and this, that's really far apart. Unless there's a lot of history behind this thing. Anyways, it might not have changed. I know that some of the vocabulary that I have already learned from WaniKani has changed. There are like 10 or so of them. So when they come back around, there's a chance I will have more discoveries along the way. I would have to look back on when this first was introduced in order to really know. But I was surprised it would take this. I was thinking to myself, this might be disagreeable. Okay, moving right along.
本当に
本当に
午前
午前
大きさ
大きさ
長い
長い The heck? Oh, I totally got this down now. The heck. This one, I think I made a big display about it the last 3 days or something. The heck, man. The heck. I don't know if that's gonna change in the future, but that's a stickler. One's a stickler one.
先回り、
回り。
二金、
二金。
羊毛、
羊毛。I don't remember. Do you speak Spanish? Do you know Spanish, Gecko? Maybe from all your French pivots. You plan to get your Spanish dual lessons to legendary as you progress on your side. Oh, okay. Back in 2020, you got about halfway through. You practically answered the question before you were already typing the response to my question. You got about halfway through the English to Spanish course. I see. And then also you started the French to Spanish course. Ah. Well, you already answered my question. I was legitimately debating while I was sitting here like, there's probably a French pivot at some point because you already mentioned French, and then we talked about Romance languages, the interconnection of Romance languages way in the early days. Oh? Hogan?
方言、
Hogan. Okay. Yes.
一体、
I
科学、
科学
海洋性、
I will say
店、
店
口、
ち
見当たる、
見当たる
し、
し
手作り、
手作り you say you got around B1, although you're a bit rusty now and probably closer to A2 in terms of comprehension and explicit reading. It's a bit easier as knowing French is a big advantage indeed. I see. I would say exactly the same actually. I think I was about B1, but this is way you said 2020? Yeah, mine is like 2 years ago, 20 years ago, as I was doing my opening opinion piece on starting Duolingo Spanish yesterday. Yeah, I would say I was around B1, and then insert 2 decades of only casual use, and that's only for like video games, like chat room, global chats and stuff. Yeah, okay. That barely scratches B1. You can make casual conversations, but we know the nature of video game conversations. They're extremely limited in the range of discussions. Usually it's words that I wouldn't prioritize as learning experiences, like how to badmouth someone or how to say I don't care and things like that, or like you're an idiot and things like that. So those are kind of the stuff that are retained, but I won't mention what they are. Generally I'm reading them and I'm not actually saying anything, so and they are most definitely acquired. I don't even think they're in B1 or A2. Like, I would say all the specialized vocabulary are not words that are emphasized in A2 or B1. Kids.
茶色
Idol.
首
Be 姉妹.
姉妹
Oh, you know, this is a funny one. Chairo, right? Chairo, you know, tea color is brown, right? Duolingo had this really weird one, and I got a chance to ask someone else from like a older perspective, a person about as old as I am, or possibly even older. In Duolingo, they pulled a funny Chinese thing. They pulled a funny Chinese thing and said, what is it? Cafe, cafe se. You know, cafe se. So, it's self-explanatory because cafe is coffee, right? And se is iro. So, coffee colored, as a analogous to chairo. So cafe se is brown, right? And I asked the person, is this a thing? Like, because in Japanese it's chairo. They decide to choose tea as the color reference, right? But coffee is pretty funny too. And coffee culture isn't that big. I would like to say I imagine tea is still bigger in China itself, but if we were to take a foreigner's perspective, like a diaspora perspective, like in the United States, for example, Chinese diaspora, I would say that coffee rivals tea. And that's kind of funny where like Duolingo is like cafe se, and I'm like, huh, instead of cha se, like as in chairo, right? Chairo is cha, right? Cha se. And yeah, sure enough, she's like, no one says that. And I'm like, oh, okay. But again, she's also Chinese native as well. So it was interesting. I think every time I see chairo, I think about that short story. It wasn't long ago. It was actually last Thanksgiving, so last November, American Thanksgiving. You'd be interested in finding some good Spanish language media. The only real one you've seen is La Casa de Papel. The paper house? The House of Paper? Oh, the House of Cards? Wait. La Casa de Papel. The House of Paper? Like the House of Cards? Other than that, I say it's mostly B for traveling. Spain is a bit easier to get to than Japan for you. That's a fair point. Do you think cafe so would still be understood? I think so. Actually, when I think about color, I attach an object to the color. So gang sai would be orange color, as in like I'm saying the orange. Orange is a non-traditional color. Like I usually use red, so use Hoang for any variances of orange. So oftentimes when you go to like, say in Japan, for example, you know, the tori gates are actually red, but they appear orange to me anyways. Like I would call them orange a lot of times, but they usually use red and sometimes use black and red for Hoang. So that's kind of the thing. So when you go into like brown and like orange and purple, oftentimes, for me anyways, I put iro and se next to an object that is very common. So when I have to distinguish between like an apple red versus an orange red, I would say 苹果色, 苹果色. So 苹果色, as in it's apple colored, and then orange colored. But orange is very convenient because orange is still an orange. In Japanese, I mean, they often use orenji as opposed to like saying lighter red. You know, you could say like light red. It would imply orange as opposed to pink. So there's like, color is such a weird thing. I think since childhood, describing color, I think when they did cafe se, it's kind of very funny because when you're outside of the standardized like way color is done, you pick your favorite object or the most common object you can think of, and then you add a color to it. In English, you still do the same thing, right? It's like, oh yeah, that's like forest green. And you know, when you say green, like how do you say midori? Midori iro. Well, you could add forest, like mura iro, like mura-esque iro. Money Heist is the English side. Oh, that is the La Casa de Papel translates to Money Heist. I did watch Money Heist actually. I totally did not make that connection. I forgot that Money Heist is in Spanish. Yeah, I totally watched Money Heist. At least the first season of Money Heist. It's a bit back. It's one of those rare, yeah, that you got some worldwide popularity to your knowledge. Yeah, much back. Yeah, I haven't. Didn't it get like early end? I'm not sure if I watched the whole thing. I watched it because I did an art piece from Money Heist. I did a Inktober prompt that was using the mask from Money Heist. Largely because it fit the prompt was heist, by the way. I think it was like 2000, and it was a 2019 prompt. No, just kidding. 2021 prompt. And then I watched the first season of it because I was curious. Yeah. I could even is it 2001? It might be actually 2002. Reminds me when I watched it. Oh, it's 2022. 2022. Oh, here it is. Old. Here we go. Yeah, this is Money Heist, right? Pretty sure. Oh, now I can watch it in Spanish. Just for the heck of it. I mean, I already watched it in Spanish, but I could watch it with a different mindset. So this was when I was experimenting with other thing. So La Casa de Papel. Interesting. How that translates to La Casa de Papel. I think it got a proper ending after a few seasons. I thought the later seasons were not as good, but still alright. I see. In this context, the papel is the money, yeah. The reason why I would say it's La Casa de Dinero would be an alternative for Money Heist. But I think there's a little deeper than saying that. I think it I might be reading into it too much, but I think it's elegant that they use papel because the house was very flimsy. You know, the whole heist thing, it's very flimsy. It basically collapsed. You know, like it was showing a heist, but it's often a heist that has gone sideways. So I thought that was kind of very interesting that they didn't use dinero as opposed to papel for money, the house of money. I don't actually know how Spanish express heist, so interesting. Or like Dolores, Dolores is fine as well. And then house, it's funny that they use casa as opposed to like a bank. I guess it might be a little redundant if it was like a bank of money. Like heist is not part of the title as well. Interesting. Also, titles are really fun, by the way. Like movie titles, when they get translated and stuff. I mean, I don't have to tell you because I think the Western ones are incredibly intriguing. Like especially when English. I watched this one content creator who talks about movie titles between like the Scandinavian countries and then their point of inspiration, which are like Hollywood films, and where one of the oddballs tend to like go really unhinged, and then the other three are like, we agree, we agree. I've got his name. He's an Icelandic person, right? That moved to Sweden or Norway. Like he no longer lives in. To be fair, I think Money Heist is not a great title. It really isn't, especially for the show's content. Like I think it's a little deceptive. It's a little bit deceptive. Oh, have you seen since we're on the topic of romance languages, did you see Lupin? I really like Lupin. There are 2 seasons. I don't know if it got renewed for the 3rd season yet. But Lupin is a great one. And it has a non-traditional like face for Lupin, the Netflix one. The Netflix Lupin. Not Lupin the Third. The anime, the classic anime series. But it's still the same Lupin, right? I don't remember how long it's been. I think it's been a year and a half now. A year and a half since I watched Lupin. Yeah. Yeah. If yes, you haven't seen it. I see. How is that pronounced elsewhere? I hear it that way most of the time to my ears. I don't say Lupin. But Lupin the Third is I guess your Keikona. Lupin. You haven't seen it yet? I quite like it. I don't think it's gonna disrupt. It's gonna have like a mind-blowing moments, but it was exceptionally well received for a French collaboration from from Netflix's publication, like attempting to expand. The other one is Portuguese. The Portuguese series 3%. I think it's Brazilian. Brazilian was the default language. You kind of understand a bit of it, like from, you hear it's like, oh, okay. There occasionally like keywords just pop up and like, oh, okay, yes. Mm-hmm. Although it's science fiction, 3% is science fiction, so a lot of it's like cognates. They have a lot of cognates, and the cognates tickle the English language as well. Any English speaker will also pick up the cognates that they have to use for 3%, like sterilization and genetics. Sterility is pretty funny. Okay. Anyways, just throwing out something, and then other romance languages. I'm trying to think of like any other romance content, romance language content I've seen out of the occasional stuff. I think someone mentioned this earlier. I haven't watched it yet, but the Spanish dub of Coco, like the Pixar Coco, I wouldn't mind watching that in Spanish, and Encanto, which is not necessarily Pixar, but related and animated one of the animated giants. Encanto in Spanish would be quite fun. Oh, speaking of that, the person who wrote the music for Encanto, right? Some of the pieces, keep forgetting his name, but I watched a reenactment, or like a production of Hamilton in Spanish. Oh, some time ago. Just curious, like, because Hamilton is still largely based in English, right? Like the context itself is in English, so it doesn't really sound that foreign in English, but the composer is a Spanish speaker, right? He's Latina. Oh, okay. Onesa.
お姉さん
To be fair, all those French sounds, on, are not found in many other languages. In is pronounced is. You're familiar with the IPA? No, I don't. I wish I knew the IPA. In is pronounced okay. I mean, all I went with was, let's go. Let's just use whatever this thing says.
Lupin.
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 Interesting. Whoever this sound. I was going off the show's name.
Lupin.
Lupin. So the way I say Lupin is the accent that the characters were speaking. That's my only makeshift. Like, I wasn't trying to do any accurate pronunciation or anything. I was just mirroring whatever was being said on screen. So whether it's a regional accent or a flexible accent or something, that's kind of how I go about my language things. Immersion, any form of immersion is usually mirrored or imitation. For me anyways. So honestly, when it comes to IPA, maybe one day I'll foray into IPA for like normalization, but generally speaking, I would take the example of whatever I'm listening to. Yeah, that girl's or synthesized voice pronunciation is correct for Lupin. Loop. Well, yeah, see, I don't have in standard French. Just say I see. Fair enough. In standard French. We're not learning French here. It's not happening, Gecko. not at least not happening for the next 2 years. So be prepared for people to say, "Hey, are you gonna?" Oh, I'm typing "jia." Are you gonna do French? Or hey, try to pronounce this French phrase and stuff, and it's gonna be whatever the closest facsimile I have in immersion. I'm not saying it as a crutch. I'm saying it as an embracer. I like imitating people's sounds. I hear sounds. I don't hear logistics or like text. So whenever someone says something enough, that's going to be my frame of reference. I think that's the whole point of immersion. For me personally, the whole point of immersion is to actively listen to what people are saying and not be overly concerned about what you think is correct. Yeah. Time flies, will be 2 years from now in no time. True. Between us. Yeah, between us. Yeah. I would agree. It would most certainly be like 2 years between us. Like in no time. Because, you know, we spend a fraction of our time. I would know largely because I'm recording most of the things. If you know what I mean.
家
Yeah. You could also join. Oh well, that's a lot. You're already doing a lot. I'm not sure if that was it's kind of interesting. I'm not sure how much synthetic voices are used now. Yeah, that last one certainly sounds synthetic. Do French people give each other nicknames by changing the ending of their names? That's probably the only other thing that I'm not quite sure when people call each other by their French, like in French. Because I say this because if you're not used to, say, like Japanese and or Chinese or something, that might also create a little bit of confusion by subtitles, because subtitles might not take into account changing endings based on familiarity. Like for example, not that it's very common nowadays, but things like you know, Saiko, Sachan, right? So if it still refers in a subtitle manner, like for Netflix or something, it still translates to like Saiko. When that person says Sachan, it might be a similar situation. I don't know. That's the only other thing that I had a curiosity about. Thanks, cheese rice. Okay, so this is still 10, right?
点
And wait, what time is it? 7? All right, so we got like 50 more reviews coming in. 7 p.m. Uh-oh. To like to enter with all your might, or like to do with all your might, something like that. That's not decisive enough. That's probably not decisive enough to be correct, right? Well, thank you. I hope to remain pretty cool. I try my best. Are you interested in language learning? Please, Royce. So we have Power Rangers, right? So Riki, Yoku, or standalone. This would be a standalone moment with strength. This is like new milk. Something about being a Tofugu. Entering. Then help. Not really. French has 2 levels of formality, but mostly for pronouns and conjugation. Not unlike u and usted in Spanish. I see. There are no name enders, so subtitles for Japanese content are sometimes tough in that regard, just like in English, I suppose. Of course, we use Mr. and Mrs. pretty much like in English too. I see. Like Chinese. I don't know if this is a diaspora thing more. Like repeating syllables and diminutives for nicknames can happen. I actually even think it happens in Spanish. Using diminutives. English do use diminutives like popo. Or in Mandarin, it, at least from a non-native perspective, you have repeated syllables too for diminutives. Although they also get shortened sometimes too. Jeez. Now that I think about it. So this one is a problem because I don't remember the strength thing. Some part of me wants to say like chikara ippai, but that's not. That sounds. I'm taking what am I taking chikara from? My first inclination is immediately on my chikara. But what is chikara? This is probably chikara ippai, but I don't. I know that it's like with all one's something. Let's say with all one's strength. Okay. And like full power, I use full power as a crutch for the whole time. And this is probably chikara, but I have no idea why it's chikara ippai anymore. Chikara. Is it like tackling? No. It's fine. Oh, I had a really embarrassing moment with this. I think it was 2 days ago. I was reading a context sentence and I'm like, what? Big person? I'm like, is it Ojin? Nah, right? Onin? Or is it like guy or tiny? And then immediately after like 2 or 3 minutes, I'm like, big person. What's a big person? Oh, it's an adult. And I'm like, oh, okay. There are okay. You say nicknames in French are rarely used and pretty much reserved for couples only. Oh, okay. Well, that's no fun. I'm kidding, obviously. It sounds like it checks out with French culture. What is a big person indeed? Probably an NBA player. Like, I spent 5 minutes going through all the combinations. I'm like, what would be all gene? Or maybe this is a special case? Like, that doesn't sound right. So I went through all the combinations and come to realize that obviously it's not any of them because it's adult. So it's otona, right? Like, you don't even get anything. It's just a special one. Otona is otona. Oh, which by the way, Gecko, yesterday I was doing the first unit of Duolingo Spanish, and already it's absolutely incredibly refreshing to tackle a language that uses articles, gender, and also pronoun forward, and like noun replacement forward, because it's so different when I did the Japanese or the first couple of units in Japanese and Chinese, because they don't even touch those things immediately. Like, you get hombre and mujer and niño and niña. Do you know how long it takes before you get to girl, boy, man, and woman in Japanese? Of course. Like, otona just violates everything too. Like, an adult, like, what? It's pretty wild. And also, I got something wrong by omitting the article. Ay de mi, right? Uh, it's going to happen. Like, oh, hey, oh yeah, I forgot about the article. And then soon it's going to be like, oh, I forgot the plural. Dang it. I forgot to add the S. I've got to change the ending. Oh, yes. And that's always fun to try to remember the gender of a washing machine, for example. Yeah, yeah. I mean, to this day, I still say la agua every once in a while. So, you know, el agua, right? So it doesn't take a washing machine. It definitely does not take a washing machine. Or what's a super classic one that I think agua is classic, absolutely classic. You still go with it. To be fair, agua is a trick, as it says with an A, not fair, but that's how the dice rolls, right? We're English speakers as well, Gecko. We have to know that this is the life of natural languages. If there's any language that will normalize, it's a trick, it's English. Come on, get that weak stuff out of here. We're already talking in English. Not fair, my foot. Talking about tricks. Come on. Oh, and I also had to test how Duolingo is being specific or not with articles. And yeah, it's very loose. At some points it's like, oh, you can put an article here if you want, but you don't need to. And then in another part, like it's already coming to fruition in the basic, like the very first unit. And it feels really weird as well. This is a different feeling because technically in the first unit you've learned 25 words. And my thought was, I felt like I learned one word. And that's kind of the whole, like, not starting from zero kind of thing. I think I got reminded what an apple was. Alright, manzana. Manzana was the word. I'm like, oh yeah, I don't use apple very often. Right? Ringo. Bingo. Right? Bingo is probably the... Bingo is Fujonese. It almost sounds like ice fruit. Anyways, yes, you do all right with gender in Spanish actually, but you struggle in Dutch, which you know a little, as well as German, which I know very often. Yeah, I'm not specifically talking about like struggling. I'm talking about like human error, like your predilections. There's no confusion that el agua is what you're going to say, but call it the classical cliche Freudian slip. But generally speaking, I'm not talking about making errors or struggling with confusion, but more like happenstance. This was the major topic yesterday with Valentine's, when Valentine shared it's hard to explain the feeling when you slip up on a conjugation in Japanese when you're not supposed to, like that feeling where, oh, you've been working on Japanese for so long now, this is the kind of thing that you're not supposed to mix up or confuse. And then Valentine said it was hard to explain. It's like, no, I don't think so. I think, or at least for myself, is that when you use a language with high enough frequency and magnitude, there's one little thing that is very, very human that will occur and tends to have heightened attention. But I honestly think it's largely because tools like this, yep, it just happens. Yeah, tools like this do not allow one to normalize that feeling, right? A tool expects you to make no mistakes, as in no human errors. And normalizing that and being able to express that is kind of my thing about el agua and la agua. I think I say la agua every once in a while, not because I don't know that water is masculine, interestingly enough, at least in my opinion. I can't explain why I thought this is a big person was Odin or Olnin or Tainin or Taijin, that kind of thing, all of a sudden, when I've seen Otona like 300 times or at least 3,000 times over. Natives mess up gender words in Spanish all the time. Yeah, that's kind of how I feel about it. You smile about it, you talk about it. I think that's kind of nice. I know that Gecko was slightly talking about a different sentiment. I know you were referring to a different type of sentiment. I wanted to share how I think this stuff is pretty funny. And what was the phrase? The struggle is real. I smile about the struggle is real, especially when you're learning multiple languages in that way. You can relate to. You're also doing intermediate English on Duo now, and it's below my level, I say, but I still manage to make mistakes once in a while. Yeah, I think you can only laugh about that stuff. What was mine? Sometimes Duolingo tells me to translate something, right, from Japanese, and I mess up the English. Actually, in the Japanese course, I think 90% of the mistakes that I make after day like the 200s were English mistakes. Pretty much most of them were English mistakes. Like did you go to karate today? For example, did you go karate today? And I'm like thinking, what's wrong with that? Did you go to karate today? Or did you go do karate today? I'm like, oh, right. That's right. There's no colloquial shortening in grammatically correct sentences. Like, for example, in the native perspective, sometimes the activity and the place becomes synonymous with each other. So if you go to tennis, you're going to do tennis, or you're going to a place in which tennis is being held. But grammatically, you have to need a preposition and or a helping verb, or like a verb phrase. And I get slapped in the face by like a tool that says, no, that's not grammatically correct. And in Duolingo's defense, they don't accept that, because obviously in Duolingo's defense, they want people to translate grammatical sentences. And then also, against Duolingo's defense, they're not taking into account that the person who's translating may be a native speaker, and those things hurt when a application is slapping in your face. It's like, hey, you're terrible at your own language. That makes me think. I noticed you didn't use the keyboard during the Duolingo lessons yesterday and relied on the word bank instead. Did you put some thought into that? If so, what's your reasoning? We always start with the default setting, and then we integrate the typing or not. And I like to use the word bank because I don't want to think about all the words I would use. It's kind of like my struggle with WaniKani. Now we're into like 2 months or 3 months. Now I'm flexing my English and translation by embellishing. But in the beginning, it's it's my due diligence to see what they want. So, also, I can't type like certain things. or or English. I mean, and I think did they have Spanish? Yeah, so the English and Spanish, I can't type all the Spanish things yet. I haven't really figured that out. So I'm also like can't do like enye's and stuff. So that's also a thing, a pragmatic thing. But I think the deeper reason is I use a word bank. I use everything in its default because as much as I think I'm quote unquote above something, I am not above not knowing what they intend. So most of the time I talk through it. So in terms of like what I would do, that's the commentary I provide over time. So when someone provides or prescribes something, I do it as much as I can think in their way, and then I would make a commentary like, oh, okay, well, you could also say this and that, largely because I want to do both. So oftentimes it comes after. Yeah, and the word bank helps me with getting into line with the system, and then we try to break down the system. That's probably the best. So I rely on the word bank, knowing that there's probably a lot of disagreements if I don't. Eventually, though, I would test how far I can go, like how much I can push the limits. Like, what if I typed this? Would they still accept it? And type this, will they still accept it? Right? For now, though, we're sticking to the word bank largely for at least a long extended time to kind of get a feel for what is prescribed. Yeah. I think the word relied would imply that I don't would be a little bit strong here, because relied would be something about being exclusive. The order of operations allow me to do both. So I use the word bank, then I make commentary and thoughts. I could make commentary and thoughts, but then that would supersede the word bank. It would mean that I would be ignorant to the word bank, and therefore know less about how people learn with Duolingo. Right? If you don't see the word bank and refuse to look at the word bank, then you wouldn't know what other people see a lot of times, especially maybe someone who is still learning English as well as Spanish at the same time. What would be the words that they would use? Like WaniKani and Hanzuhiro, I have a really terrible time of remembering the word get. Get? What was it? Get? Seems? Oh my gosh, I can't tell you how often I type something else other than seems. Get, speak, Seem, get, speak. Be. Think versus feel. Oh boy. Yeah. Yeah, my English is a little bit too specialized when it comes to very, very shorter word. Get catches me all the time. Or to be. To be gets me all the time. You never use the word bank yourself? That's fair. Yeah, that's fair. I don't think people use word bank most of the time. I think what I mean is for experienced language learners, I don't think they use word bank as well. And they don't go back, right? You don't go back. Once you leave the word bank, you don't go back. Largely due to favoring dynamics, right? You're favoring your own dynamics versus the system's dynamics. So as long as you understand that when you get something wrong, it's you, not Duolingo's system, because you're not using the word bank, right? And that can be a crutch in its own self. For sure. He's got to get got. Oh my gosh. It do be that way sometimes. It do be that. Yeah. What I don't really like sometimes is what I can't resonate with is those people who voluntarily believe they're above a system and then complain about something that does exist, but it doesn't exist in their mind. So for example, like, man, I really hate when Duolingo wants me to use this particular word. It's like, how would you know this particular word? And immediately they're like, you know, you see, I type in the answer and like, how would I know that that's exactly what they want? It's like, well, there's a word bank. Right? That's kind of like saying, man, these guidelines are not worded exactly the way I need to understand. I want to understand it. So therefore, there's no chance that I could understand it if they weren't worded a specific way. So that's kind of my more pedantic way of suggesting. I could do both. It's fine if I do both. The system itself doesn't have to know it. Doesn't have to know it. I like to think that I'm far more beyond a system, so I can play by the rules and not play by the rules. Actually, I think this whole adding synonym business is getting a little unhinged at this point for me. Like, I'm like, let's add this. Yeah, let's add this. It's like, this will help me remember as a safety net. I have so many safety nets now in WaniKani, in Hanzahiro, and it's just getting more and more unhinged. Like, I'm still typing the words that they want, right? Like, this big person, I could put in big person as a safety net, because eventually when I think big person, I can get to adult. But I don't want to necessarily have to consistently say adult. Like, if I read a sentence, if someone says otona, I can think and imagine a big person, therefore an adult. The meaning is not lost if I think or imagine a big person, right? That happens a lot in Chinese, especially Chinese. For me personally, when someone cafe se would be a great example. If they said brown, I could still think of coffee, and that is the color, and not cafe se. I don't actually know what the word brown is. But when someone says, oh, this coffee is this color, I look at the coffee and it's like, oh, they must mean brown, right? That's the kind of thing that's wonderful about not working confined to a system. And I totally understand why people would not use a word bank. They would type and also accept the consequences that the system might not distinguish what you want. And I would say my accuracy would go down a poop chute the moment I start typing whatever's on my mind. In Dual Japanese, I like to be able to type the answer using kanji since you started with WaniKani before Duo and you're ahead of Duo on kanji. Yeah. Yeah. Fun fact, in some Spanish-speaking countries, cafe is used instead of maru. Maru. Yeah. That's a great example. Oh, so they use cafe too. Cafe. Interesting. Yeah, I think that's a fun little fact. I actually think cafe se sounds remarkably American, like Americanized Chinese. As in, if I had to ask my parents what do they drink more often, they actually drink coffee more often because of the Americanized culture that they lived in. So when they are referring to their brown color, they might actually just use coffee. It's like, yeah, that's very convenient. Hear me out here, Gecko. I did start with Duolingo, right? And then they practice a lot of hiragana, but I actually use all of their hiragana exercises to type in kanji and vice versa. So using their word bank forces me to read the kana and while thinking in kanji. So when you're saying you're able to type the answer, you like to be able to type the answer using kanji, well, you don't necessarily have to type it. You could also type the kana and imagine the kanji. So it's up to you to determine what your weaknesses are. Because for me, when I hear someone speak, I see kanji now, but before I saw kana, which was not very useful. However, when you're looking at a word bank, you can do the kanji read yourself, and it is very difficult and inefficient. So that's not a great result. Most people like to be efficient, right? It's kind of like the age-old common thing. You know you've read enough kanji when you no longer could read kana, right? Or when you struggle with reading kana, especially in the context of an entire sentence. And then one could argue, well, Japanese is not written that way, so you don't need to practice that anyways. Like, yeah, you don't. Unless you're learning. So yeah, dispensing with things that you learned and you don't need to do them anymore, that's very appropriate. Would I do that? Yeah, maybe. Sometimes I read kana. I'm more in the minds of explaining the connection between kana and kanji. So yes. Yeah. I don't, for me, even if I started WaniKani before Duolingo, if I had to guess, right, I can't do it anymore. If I had to guess, I will still probably do it the way Duolingo set it up, only just to see what happens after. It's difficult for me to express that feeling to anyone else, largely because they believe that learning and stuff is fundamentally one-directional, right? Once you're past a certain point, you don't need to do those things anymore, and that's totally understandable. I wanted to know why Duo do that. So even now, like, I wouldn't skip these things. Hear me out. Here's the WaniKani version. If you use Duolingo and then you get to WaniKani, you could tell yourself, well, I don't need to memorize any of these mnemonics, right? You don't have to remember any of these mnemonics because you already know the words, right? And I didn't. I tried my best to understand how Co and company order their mnemonics, because I'm not beyond that. And it's the same silver lining I would give if I started with WaniKani first and go to Duolingo, largely because I'm investigating how they approach things. I think it would be worth disclaiming, and or it would be of a reach when someone understands how a tool works without actually using the tools that were set for them, right? So I give the benefit of the doubt with a bunch of disclaimers. I'm not from zero, but I'll still give it my best to try to remember the mnemonics. And for a while, we already talked about this for like the 2 month summary or a bit back when you asked. So what do I think about the order in which like kunyomi and onyomi is introduced, right? And that is retroactively very different for me, since in order for me to remember onyomi reading, I just need to remember the kunyomi reading. You might be saying, what does that mean? Well, Duolingo actually has a preference, a higher tendency to introduce the kunyomi reads for the vast majority of their things, a lot of times, like because of their focus on sentence construction or like using sentences. Sentences tend to be related to a lot of kun readings because they're uniquely, I guess you could say they're uniquely Japanese in a sense. And then in order to remember what's the onyomi, I remember the kun, and it's like, it's not that. So what are the other reads that is not that? So like every single verb, for example, every single predicate, it's like, okay, well, I know not kun read. Because of that, I don't need to remember the mnemonics. So many of these things, like otona, I don't need to remember. It's a special case because like English, it is a special case. But in Duolingo, you remember as otona with no reference of onyomi, kunyomi, or rules. It's otona. It will always be otona. But the problem here now is that I embraced the way WaniKani goes about introducing reads. So instead, I ended up prioritizing reads. So I look at this, I see 2 kanji. And when I see 2 kanji, typically it uses onyomi. So I went straight into thinking, okay, let's use onyomi. Let's combine them. Okay, that doesn't sound familiar. So now let's do kunyomi, onyomi hybrids. And then let's use kun hybrids. And the last step is knowing that they're exceptions. And this would be an exception. If I'm on Duolingo, I would immediately just say this is otona because there's no possible other way to say this character. It's otona. These 2 characters together, otona, period. No matter what. So that's kind of illustrating how Duolingo goes about it. And WaniKani, there's no deconstruction or assembly in Duolingo. And that's due to word banks, and more word banks. So kind of that, like this, otona is linked with oki, right? Oki and okina, largely because they all include the big character, and that's it. The reads themselves are not like decomposed to anything. You know that these are all the reads. That's about it. And I think that's an interesting way to think about things. Now I think about them in both ways, which is very convenient, right? Very convenient. I think the way it is up to the user, right? It is up to the user to decide what they want to extract from it in terms of not the content itself, but the process itself. So Duolingo's process is most definitely different from WaniKani, but I could have used my experience with Duolingo to circumvent any learning experience about the process with WaniKani. And I think, in my opinion, more than 50% of language learners, more than 50% of learners in general, are not interested in the process once a process already works. You don't have to expand your process if it continues to work. So when someone discovers Anki, if they like Anki, they will make the utmost attempt to transfer and transcribe Anki's approach into everything else. And that's a very pragmatic way of iterating on one's process, as opposed to trying to reset and discover new processes, like using a word bank again. I'm terrible at multiple choice questions, by the way, for this very nature that I'm describing, because I usually don't think of things as multiple choice. I usually think of them as open-ended questions. So when someone asks me, what is your favorite anime? My mind explodes. I'm like, okay, so how do I answer this? Well, first, let's try to qualify it so that it becomes a multiple choice question. I must limit myself into a specific question, or when someone asks me a true and false question, or a yes and no question, yes or no question, I have to learn a way to limit and qualify what's considered yes or no. You must say you are behind in visualizing kanji as you don't practice handwriting. Interesting. When you I'm kind of curious. When you hear someone like say something, right? Do you imagine the kanji? Like what are the things that pop into your mind? I still think of images for the most part at the moment. So when someone says like otona, I'm thinking of a man. Actually, I'm gonna be real. Like, let me demonstrate what actually goes on in my head. What I actually visualize. You know those emotes that kind of look like this? This is literally what I'm imagining. And this is a Lego piece. That's when Otona shows up. This is what I'm imagining. And yellow skin, right? Yellow skin. I'm imagining a Lego piece. before this character, before this, before most of these things, I still do the typical things. So even if I'm trying to get the kanji and as well as writing it and whatnot, it's funny. Our mind works in wonderful ways. Okay.
大人
All right. And I can't help but think of a cowboy when I see this radical, this right radical. I'll let you use your imagination while I keep thinking of a cowboy. Okay. One drawing. Why does the city radical remind me of a cowboy? Right? This one right here. So, right, we have. Well, actually, it's not actually this, but hold up. It's not actually this. It's this. Right? Most of the time you don't see the kanji, you see the concepts. So if I hear otona, I will think of an adult. So kind of language neutral, I say. Yeah, the image. So why does this remind me of a cowboy? Cue the Western music. Yeah, cue the Western music. I was trying to like create cacti, and then maybe like add a back horizon. Very, very like very, very small mountains. Sun. There we go. I would need like other colors and stuff to separate the background, but you get the point. It's a guy just chilling there with what do you call those things? There's a Spanish word for them. I think SD can help me with this. The thing, the like is it a poncho? I don't think it's a poncho. Maybe it's a poncho, like a woven poncho. I was making it slightly tethered to make it look like, yeah, around the neck. Yeah, it goes around the neck and it kind of like drapes, but it usually is the cool thing that it covers the shoulder. Yeah, and it like flutters in the wind, makes it look like all cool. And especially when someone who's very worn, you have like tethered, they're kind of slightly tethered and frayed, so they're kind of like flowing in the wind. It's kind of like the equivalence of shinobi when they have a scarf and it's like kind of tethered. That's a poncho. Okay, good. Yeah, so it's kind of like the cool, like also the shinobi kind of thing where they have a scarf and it just flows in the wind, right, while they're just standing there posing or something. That's kind of what I was thinking. And that's what this little like part, this towel, right, this part is actually a towel. That's how I remember the radical towel for this part. It's a like a towel on a ground, right? You could view this as a ground, and then this part here as the towel. So when you like tie a towel around your shoulder and drape and blow some wind, it kind of reminds me of a poncho. Kid things, you know, when you're a little kid, you wore a cape, you run around in a cape. Cute. Sorry. All right, I'm done. That was my one thing. I'm trying to reserve all my creative juices for this October, right? Inktober 2025. We'll be doing this. We'll try to create find a reason to write kanji and hanzi in our drawing prompts. Okay, what is the chikara thing? They don't have the meaning? Oh, it's because it's from the we have to go here, and then we have to go here. Chikara. What was the chikara? Oh, squeeze them cheeks. That was it. It's squeezing your cheeks, you know, glute, right? Glute, you gotta squeeze them cheeks with all your power. How could I forget that one? I thought that one was pretty funny. Some cheeks. Chikara. Okay. And if you want to type something, you will know the meaning, obviously, what I'm trying to say, and the kana phonetic, which is what I type. Interesting. Then it will transform into kanji, and I'll be able to tell that's... Apart from very simple kanji, like, so, for example, you don't really visualize them in your mind, even though I can recognize them. Oh, so here's something about Duolingo. When I'm typing, I see the kana that I want to type. So like I'm reading the kana before they become kanji. Like I'm not typing for what I'm saying, I'm typing for my sound. So like when I think of benkyo, benkyo shimashita. Benkyo shimashita, I'm thinking Benkyou shimashita. Like, when I'm typing, I'm reading the kana when it's converted into the kanji, and then I double check that the kanji is correct afterwards. So my kana is still intact on the way I type. So when I'm typing on here, for example, when I see the kana, I validate that it matches with the kanji. So like, hairu. When I'm going to my keyboard, I'm typing hairu. I'm typing ha-e-ru when I'm seeing it. So I don't translate anything. I know what it sounds like. I'm like, I want to say hairu for this. Hai-e-ru. That's it. And then when it converts the kanji, I confirm that is the proper kanji that I'm looking for. As opposed to like figuring out, quote unquote, like something else of what it means. I hear it in my head most of the time because Duolingo, for the longest time, only used sound and kana. Okay, so it's the same. It's funny that you do that when you type, even though you're able to go straight to kanji as you do when you write it by hand. Yeah, exactly. Yep. I think that's the nuance of what happens with Duo. And hear me out. The moment Duo swapped over to kanji, it was effortless. It was like one extra step. Like everything was one extra step. Like it's to the point where I don't even look at the kanji. I have to hear it and then look at the kanji. So like I'm hearing it's like, okay, so that's what that means. What does the kanji look like? Oh, okay, so that's what the kanji means now. And that's it. WaniKani does the opposite as well to some the WaniKani goes like right to the end, right? So they're skipping over that. And that is, now I'm doing everything backwards. So like I see this and I'm like, okay, so all right. Now I have the mnemonic. I have the meaning. So what does that look like in kana? Oh, hairu. So everything is in backwards for the moment. For the moment, it's backwards. I don't like skip the step. I still do the step even in reverse. To double check my kana, because I also double check my speaking, and I also double check my writing. So I have to. So hairu looks like that. It does not look like that. To grow looks like that. So to grow looks is top. Hairu is not to grow yet. Because hairu could be something else. Right? And that's what Duolingo has normalized in me when I was using Duolingo. Like, hairu does not mean what it sounds like until it has its kanji. Right? Because how else are you gonna differentiate between kaki and kaki and kaki and kaki and kaki? Kaki. I think there are like 6 kakis. So, yes, Duolingo made you work way harder. Way harder, implicitly, because you have no shortcuts. Well, I know it's not necessarily your primary goal, but I think approaching it from multiple directions on different platforms is probably great for learning efficiency. That is my primary goal, actually. That is one of my primary goals. Not probably not for the results that most people think. My primary goal is not Japanese fluency. That's probably one thing that's my primary goal is to be engaged in an activity in which I may become fluent in Japanese, right? The different directions is what keeps me wanting to continue learning. Like, when someone asks me, use this instead of that, my answer is why not both? Now, there's a big asterisk here. I have time. I have the due diligence. Even if I don't have time, I'm able to discipline, right? I discipline myself in order to make time for those things because I have time. Just because I have time, I'm not necessarily saying I'm throwing my time away. I make time, and when I don't have enough time, I try to balance them. Largely because it keeps me wanting to learn and keeps me consistent. Like, I'm still learning in a way, but I'm learning in a way that one of the goals or one of the consequences of being engaged in my learning, as in actively in my learning, is that it's irrelevant whether it's efficient or not, largely because I don't have to be efficient to consistently stay consistent. When you're maximizing for efficiency, sometimes you lose consistency. I mean, maximizing efficiency is probably not my priority. No, it's not. Yeah, it's definitely not. And I need to make mention of that all the time and compare it with efficiency, largely because I disagree that the most efficient way, in fact, I would even argue a little bit strongly that when you focus on maximizing efficiency, you become less consistent. Like, largely because the seeking of maximizing something and minimizing negativities, right? Minimizing and ignoring what is considered negative and maximizing what is considered positive, that comes at a sacrifice of consistency most of the time at the extreme ends. If your goal is to maximize efficiency, that's great because you're banking on not having to be consistent for a very long time. I'm not saying they're mutually exclusive of each other. There's a mix, right? There's a mix in there. However, when you're going to the extreme ends, like people who emphasize this non-negotiably, being efficient means you have to be consistent less often, right? Because it compensates for being a lack of consistency. When you're very efficient, you don't have to spend a lot of time. So you only have to be consistent for a year as opposed to 4 years, largely because you're more efficient. You don't have to work harder or due diligence or practice harder, as in from the perspective of an efficiency person. For me, the easier way to do things is the way I'm more. So if I need to be more efficient, it's going to be hard. And I do try that. In Hanza Hero, I'm trying to be more efficient than I am in WaniKani. In WaniKani, for Japanese, the way WaniKani is designed, I think being efficaciously accurate is more appropriate for WaniKani. In Hanza Hero, I'm being faster and looser because then the system itself promotes me to fix to correct the mistakes a lot faster. In fact, I think Hanza Hero does well largely because it's closer to Anki. And I totally understand now why people think that way and normalize that way and build their vocabulary that way, because Hanza Hero is still not even more flexible than Anki right now because of FSRS. Once Hanza Hero, which the developer Kevin has expressed, they might integrate a lot of the FSRS from Anki, then that thing is going to be completely flexible. So when it's completely flexible, then you can do whatever the heck you want. Maximize the efficiency to your heart's content. But for me, I play the game. This is figurative game. We're not talking about video games now. I play the game of I play the developer's game, their way of thinking, and then I do whatever I want on top of it. But I think incidentally, the method or routine you set up still seem pretty efficient overall. I like to think so. Gecko, I know you're heading to bed. I like to think overall it becomes efficient, right? It is efficient overall. I don't want to make it so the irony here is that in order to say it's efficient overall, like for me, obviously other people can have their opinions about what I'm doing. For me, since the way to do this is to not focus on efficiency, I'm not qualified enough to I appreciate that you feel this way because I've always had this desire to demonstrate how to be consistent in things because it might not be that different at the long end. I haven't done both experiments personally or catered and build a way to test this in a blind study or something. But I think in my life's demonstration is that someone who's hyper efficient and about to crash or burn out, that resting period, I end up catching up most of the time. Then it's negligible in the long run. The question is, who's happier across the thing? If this person takes 1 year to do something and they burn out and recover for 6 months, but I get to a negligible place in 1.5 months, but I'm consistently happier instead of grinding and burning, going through burn cycles, which one would you prefer? That's kind of my thought in recording all of this, right? Which one would you prefer? I like to give an idea that you don't have to focus on maximum efficiency, but still end up taking a longer time, but you're consistently more happier than running the risk of burning out. And I have not burned out. I'm not even close to being burned out on language learning. In fact, most of the time I quit or my sessions are over when I still have like 8 to 9 hours of energy left. And if someone thinks that I'm learning quite a lot or quite efficiently while not really pushing myself all that hard, I think it merits a discussion. You probably won't be able to catch you'll probably, Spanish lessons live often because, schedule. I do have to move my schedule up. I know you're going to bed now. Oyasumi nasai Gekko. But I do have to push up my schedule now. We're doing something on weekends with my friends, my online friends. And so I think I'm going to have to shift everything 4 to 5 hours earlier. So there might be a chance and not really catching the Japanese side of things on exchange. But thank you. Thank you, Gekko. It's always been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure talking about these things. I think it's one of my primary goals. My primary goals is that learning is almost entirely optional nowadays outside of your life stuff, and getting the opportunity to exercise these things and then transferring them to life skills, it's impeccable. I can't tell you, if you can do this, like kids these days, man, they're so good. If you can do this, you can take 1 extra step each day outside. You can take 2 extra steps each day outside. You can look at a tree for like 3 seconds longer. You can draw triangles and then circles, squares, and suddenly you're drawing masterpieces. So consistency. I'm absolutely 100% far more biased because I focus on life skills, habit formation, right? Critical thinking, interpersonal skills. So the foundation of these type of skill building and self-improvement is you're playing the long game. You're not playing the short game. And I think it's really heartwarming when I heard like yesterday when Valentine said like, oh, they're, cutting their workload by half because they're noticing that they're going to burn out soon. That warms my heart, right? I love when people understand that they're keeping track of how to keep themselves consistent, because there are certain skills and certain things. Language learning could be one of them. It's debatable. Learning a language is for life, right? For some people and not for some people. I like to think that hopefully no one thinks that I'm having a bad time learning 3 languages at once. I'm not. Even when I make mistakes, I do kind of try to elicit my emotions in order to remember them. But I genuinely look forward to spending 6 or 8 hours studying every single day. you don't have to. It's not a competition. I do feel that most people have the potential to do that when they're not focused on efficiency. Quality is not efficient, in my opinion. Like it's far harder to quantify what is quality time when you're focused on efficiency. Have a smile, do your reviews, but definitely find that medium. Okay. Hairu.
生える
Haeru. Interesting. Okay. No point. Okay. Hit. Go. Go. Me.
照明
Chome. Hmm.
大空
大空。
食べる
食べる。This is a special one, right? Yes. So, shoot. Yes, because shutsuketsu sounds awful, right?
出血
Shuketsu. Okay. um. Ogoe. Ogoe, yeah.
小声
Wait. Fix go is non-stop. Right? What is traveling? I might get these two mixed up. Fix go, traveling. This is non-stop for sure. What the heck was the motive? Guess we'll see it when we see it, right?
「見える
Eru.
号室
Ghosts. I need to differentiate between Choku, and Jiki, right? Oh, Shojiki. Shojiki was traveling. This is obviously not Shoji. Cho? Ko. Or Shoko. Oh no. Wait. It's definitely Choko. Yeah. Right? My gut feeling makes me want to say, oh no. No, yeah. My feeling is we have to shorten this.
直行
Choko, yes. Choko. So many meanings from this. I think from is what we're gonna use. Yaku. To cut out. Yeah, that's fine. I don't have to. Ikin.
一斤
Kiritoru. Kiritoru. Yes. Kiritoru.
切り取る
Toru. Ne? Oh, 社長.
社長
All right, and then we're gonna do our 58. It's almost 9, so we might end up getting the 6 as well. I yapped a little too much. Sorry, guys. I know. It's part of my brand. Okay. Kongetsu. Oh wait. Hold up. It's kongetsu. What is what used gatsu? Oh, nangatsu. Right? It was nangatsu. That's it. So this is still kongetsu.
今月
Kongetsu. It was nangatsu is the exception for now. Up. So agaru. No, ageru. Is this still just to go up? I don't know what agaru is, how they phrased agaru now. Yeah. Or, no. I think the one that I'm thinking of to go up is, transitive, go up is noboru, right? This is being compared to noboru. This is still to go. No! Oh, it's to raise? To lift something? Ooh. Yeah. So let's see if they gave anything for going up. Yeah, see, they don't. Once again, it's the not paying attention to kana. No attention is given to kana. That's one of the we have to come up with a difference. We have to come up with a system for this. Sorting out this stuff is a really large weakness to WaniKani. There's so much narrow hyper focus on kanji that the understanding of the kanji is getting crippled. This is such a crutch. The geru thing. Yeah. I paused on this because it doesn't seem like what it is. So what am I thinking of when I say to lift? So to go up is still noboru and agaru. Ne? Yeah, I really dislike that there was no attention paid to verb endings. now I'm not even sure because of that. Yeah, this is probably one of the lowest points in WaniKani's using WaniKani. I mean, you could use rote memory, I suppose. That's probably what I'm gonna end up using. Oh, that makes me feel every single, I think over 90% of my trigger points deal with how they neglect kana. And it's actually the majority of people dislike that there was any attention used for kana. Kana is part of the Japanese vocabulary. So, I don't know. What's this? Writing? Writing? It's definitely not Stan. Stan is... Is it Stan? No. Stan is the other character. It's not Giant. Giant is Hanzahiro's. Yeah. Oh, that Ageru illustrates my points so hard. Jeez. Oh. Mawakoto. Oh. Oh. Ugh.
Kudasai.
That's like... Oh, there it is too. This is just we'll do to go up. They're in the same bundle, so oh, oof. Ye? Oh, MAKU. Asu? This is to add, right? To add something? Asu? Could be enough. This is definitely Tasu. But what is the meaning? Again, I'm pausing on a verb again because no attention is made to... I have not made any attention to the verb ending, right? And I don't know if they did anything. Tasu.
足す
Tasu. We'll see. It.
山
Marugoto.
丸ごと
あげる
Iru. So triggering. It may be something to do with sue. Is that how they go? Sue? Maybe you add so much that someone tries to sue you for that nasty pile of squirrels you keep outside. Okay. So we have suing something. I remember something else too. It was another thing. I don't remember what's mu for. Who? Yeah, su is the only one that I remember actually. For su. Oh, and it's not su only. It's also for su. A person named Su. What was one that used Su as in the person name? It was copy. You're making copies for Su. So it's not consistent enough either. At the moment to even use that for endings. I don't even know what is used for the mnemonic is Conan, right? To make something, to carry something out. Oh. Is it? Oko, oh. Okonao. Yeah, Okonao. I don't know where the U is. It just doesn't have an U, I guess. The U is ignored. Uni is the closest thing. Yeah, it's to carry something out. And it's Okonao. This is Noboru. No boy, right? But there's no do.
登る
There's no do reference, is there? No. Nothing for do. I guess do is the default. So maybe they're using do as the default. I don't know. I have no idea. So triggered. Oh, okonao, right?
行う
Oh. Yeah. We can use Nana.
7
I swear that wasn't dog. um Talent. What was this? Talent is making slides and slides with 1,000 sai. Why am I thinking of sai? It's definitely sai, but why is it sai? Cyborg. Yikes, we haven't seen Cyborg in a while. There's no Cyborg reference in a while. Is this a narwhal? WaniKani is the one that has narwhal, right? Okay. Oh, hey, speaking of the Sue. Oh no, this is not Sue. This is do. So it's not the Sue like this is to be photographed, right? There's no do. This is utsuru. Utsuru? No. This is not to be photographed. This is to copy. No, wait. This is to be photographed. Utsuru is to be photographed, and utsutsu is to copy to photograph, right? This is because you're copying for su, right? That's how you get the to copy. You're copying for su. But this is do, which they don't do anything for do. Right? We're gonna have to think of a system that connects all the different verbs together. Pretty sure this is still utsuru. Because if you're being photographed, and what are they being photographed for? For copying you, right?
映る
Oh no, because you're being noisy. You're being noisy. You're being noisy, so they took a photograph because they're beatboxing.
近い
Word.
Ue
Wait. Ue.
下 富士山
Fuji-san. Okay. Nanatsu.
7つ
Those are different. It could be confused with Hanzahiro stuff. Literature.
Bungaku
Bungaku. Soil. What the heck do you want here, dirt? uh, I just asked my sub Noma the other day by coincidence. Oh no. Oh no! Oh wait. Hold up. Umareru is to give birth, right? It's to be born. I don't even have to look. It's to be born. It illustrates my point again that there's no attention to the ending. The heckin' it's constant. This is one of the weakest parts about WaniKani. Lack of due diligence to endings to verbs. It's pretty much one of the biggest, one of the most prominent parts about verbs, actually, in Japanese. There are a lot of Japanese that sound and read the same, and the kana is very important. So we're just gonna have to deal with that for now.
Umareru.
Mareru.
Ishikoro.
Koro. Yeah, that ticks me off. These two like triggers me. Weakness. We're gonna compensate for this weakness. We're gonna do a routine. The routine is to write, to recall reminders of all the related verbs. We're gonna have to do a separate routine for verbs. I think this SRS is really terrible and negligent about differentiating verbs. It's not a problem when you're always learning with sentences, obviously, because the verbs themselves have to contextualize based on the sentences. So implicitly, Duolingo does a better job at, or personally, differentiates verbs because they're in the context of a sentence. Even with simple like nouns and whatnot, it's baked into the verb themselves. So like you can't confuse umareru with I don't know, hairu, for example. Largely because even one or two words next to the prompt will give you the context to differentiate between the verbs. And I actually think most people do that inherently already. However, you can still make mnemonics to remember them. So like umareru, how do I know immediately after I typed to give birth that it's incorrect, that it's to be born? Is because umare is birthplace. But to give birth still has birth in it, and birthplace, to be born, is a birthing as well. So it was a 50-50 shot. It's either to be born or to be born. To give birth, sorry, or to be born, because the only reference is u, which is urgent, but they almost all of them have u in this case, outside of the ones that are not. So I rule those out. So that's not helpful. This is not helpful. And it makes you focus on the u without knowing what the rest is. Right. And it's not pedantic enough, actually, as well. It's not redundant enough to remind you of, oh, we're just going to practice making... This is efficiency design, in my opinion. So if you know the baseline, one thing that I also dislike that I've been compensating for is, oh, you know the reads. So just use whatever you learned before. That's being efficient. But efficient is not pedantic. Efficient does not produce redundancies. So you're not doing due diligence. You're doing shortcuts. You're being more and more efficient doing shortcuts. So when the order changes, then you have a problem. Like, oh, like this is a jukugo, right? A jukugo, you should know both the readings. Well, if you don't know the readings, how do you get to the readings anymore? The same goes with learning for meanings. It only goes in one direction. So then when you start going backwards, you're hoping that you've learned the things previously and haven't forgotten them, right? Because that's how progression works. That's how SRS works. The idea is you unlocked the next things because you remember all of things before. That's great if it always works that way. If it always works that way, meaning you always remember all the things that you've learned as you level up, I think that is incredibly naive, but it's incredibly efficient. So you're assuming you never forget anything. Now, if you forget something, it shows up in your queue again, right? In order to reinforce. But now something breaks down. If you forget this, you might still remember the thing that this was based on. Or you forget something in the middle and you don't know what's in the beginning or the end. Right? And you can only go from the beginning to the end. So you're doing the thing where you stop wherever you no longer you stop wherever it is and you keep going back. You're looping back in logic as opposed to having the flexibility of going from beginning to end, end to beginning, middle to the end, middle to the end, to the beginning, like being flexible. And that's throwing in redundancies, in my opinion. One of my biggest criticisms for now, for myself, is thinking forward, backwards, and everything in between. So due diligence is what I would say this is. You make your due diligence and you write all the stuff regardless if it's redundant. And I think that's one thing that Duolingo unapologetically does. Is like, yeah, people are gonna get tired of constantly saying wa, like watashi wa something, I don't know, kyo wa, kyo this, kyo wa, kyo, you know, today, tomorrow, constantly over and over again. But it's that redundancy in case you forget something. Now that's an extreme case, but for this, saving text, saying like, oh, you already know this, so that's easy. Still write it out, right? So that's what I'm gonna do soon. We're gonna write in our notes in the notes section, and we're gonna fill in the redundancy, right? So when someone says, when they say, oh, this is a regular jukugo, I'm gonna say, well, we use, and it's gonna type the two mnemonics if it becomes a problem, right? We're only gonna do it for the problem ones because it's already too late to do it for the others. So I'll write out the two mnemonics. The two mnemonics that we were supposed to know. But the way WaniKani is written is, in my opinion, complacent. It's slightly, for more direct rank, is lazy. It's being less diligent. There's no due diligence in the design. Just because you're assuming, it's like, oh, you've learned these two before, use those two. Well, you're producing a software. That software means once you type it once, you can practically copy and paste them. Now, why do I think that it's kind of acceptable? It's the idea that you have this complex chain of things. So now, in order to do that, instead of having it in the same tab, you're going to have to go down here. You're going to have to click on kanji composition. Then you have to go down here, and you yourself have to go through and find the actual like a mnemonic, and then you have to transpose and transcribe it to the other mnemonic. But instead, we're gonna do it differently. From now on, when these things come up, right? Umareru. If I remember the mnemonic, which I clearly don't, but now I can write something else here, right? Something like related to birthplace. Oh, and I still have to then do like IEM stuff, right? I'd have to switch over to an IEM, and I would have to type like umare, right? It's related to umare. And then do my shortcuts, which I don't know. And like related to birthplace, umare. And one is born with a birthplace, right? And that would be the due diligence that I feel, because WaniKani and most developers a lot of times want to be efficient with their like software and stuff. They cut corners. You take a leap of faith that you don't need to do these redundancies anymore. And that's fine. I think that's something that I disagree with. However, it is efficient, right? This illustrates one of the things that Gecko and I were talking about that we differ in. When someone like using the word bank, for example, the word bank is redundant. If you think it's redundant, you remove the word bank and you type, right? But for those moments that you forget, there's a redundancy in Duolingo. It's so redundant that most people think that they're beyond that redundancy, and that's perfectly fine, right? That's understandable. You don't have to read the whole sentence if you already know the gist of the sentence. However, for those times when you forget and you're in the middle of something, or at the end, something that's not the beginning, and you can't reach to that point, you will be sitting there, in my opinion, trying to figure out what it is. And the easiest and most efficient way to do it is to get it wrong and have it explain it to you, right? And I really dislike that. I personally do not like using that type of skill or mentality. Like, oh yeah, let's just quickly, in the interest of time, let's just quickly get it wrong and then go look for the right answer, right? You have no capacity to figure it out. And I think the whole point, like one of the points of the mnemonics, is to try to figure it out in case you don't know it. I mean, the easiest way, obviously, no harm, no foul, you look it up. It does not help me feel rewarded for that. Hanzahiro, by comparison, I am more prone to make mistakes and take my chances and whatnot, because I can learn to use a system to figure it out. This, not so much. In fact, I'm starting to understand why a vast majority of people keep saying like, oh, I'll only use a mnemonic if it's useful. As in, most of the time, if the mnemonic is not useful, I don't use it. It's because it demonstrates that a lot of times the mnemonics aren't related to each other. They don't have more incentives other than remembering the one thing. And that's kind of a little bit disappointing. But we'll make it more relatable. All right. So the two errors I had, right? They're related to each other. This the reason why I'm saying all this stuff is to remind myself, what is it? Why is it that I'm constantly stopping on these things? I don't think I seldomly, after the first day's exposure and a review day that I seldomly stop on anything other than a verb. The verbs, kana is incredibly neglected, especially verb endings. Verbs have verb endings, period. They have kana endings that constitutes an entire class of words. And yeah, WaniKani is focused on kanji. So I guess you could say it's acceptable to all constantly juggle and conflict with verbs. And you can go on and learn them elsewhere. And that's true. That's true. Which is probably what I'll do. Or we can try to add something else. It is part of the experience. Alright, let's go over Monix. This is probably my working project, my next couple months. Or next couple weeks. Next couple of weeks, I'm going to try to work out a way to negotiate verb endings. Okay. Wing, box. I think there's a room for improvement for myself. Not for other people, but for myself. Box, black, stamp, husband, clan, boat, fish, yellow, black, circumference, table, temple, gate, self, teacher, top hat, bird, and elephant. Reads. I wouldn't be as critical about human error, right? Or like confusion and stuff. But those are actual problems for me. As in, it's very important to devote time to something that is consistently erroneous. That's a consistent problem. So, consistent problems, when you solve or able to remediate, ameliorate, kind of like soften the problem that is consistently occurring, it provides a lot of dividends, a return on investment. I think verbs are incredibly weak the way the mnemonics are haphazardly designed for something that's incredibly consistent. Okay. Yuka. Yuka. You. Natsu. En. Tsu. I. Itsu. Mi. Matsu. Ho. Natsu. Yaku. Tsu. O. Yo. Ri. Yuki. A. Okay. And the two. Umareru. So we're going to use umari? To get to be born. Ageru. Geru. Hold up. There's just so much with ageru. Yeah, this one is gonna be tough. I think we're gonna add some extra ones. To raise. To elevate. Oh. To increase. Oh, no, that's fine. But we're doing the same thing. Whoops. We're doing the same thing for doing the transitive and intransitive thing. I'm gonna remove the transitive and intransitive differentiation. It's not good enough. Hang on. Also, we gotta look at this. So, ue is fine. Ageru. Gozu. Gozu is special. Noboru is our only one, right? No, we have yeah, we have agaru. There's agaru. These both actually overlap, right? To go up, get higher. But this is the intransitive one, which is actually not related in its English meaning. Enough. Yeah, that's probably the problem. So agaru. They have to rise. To raise. All of these still mean the same thing for agaru. Like to increase, to ascend, to elevate, to raise. Because it's a differentiation of... So I think that will solve that problem. The differentiation is one's intransitive and one's transitive. Right? So remembering that is far more reliable than not mentioning anything at all. And then this one... How do I differentiate this from... Usu? Right, usu. It's usu is to give birth. Is that right? No. Yes. No. Ooh. Umu? Yeah, umu. And I don't know what is mu. Like, how would you know it was mu? So, umu. This is fine. One is born in a birthplace. But you see, this is, since the kanji with blah blah blah, to be born, and then the read is that the meaning is that, what's the ultimate verb version of the kanji? That would be to be born, the very beginning of life as we know it. But then when you go to birthplace, it's related to umareru by saying to be born, there's a birthplace. But they're not written in each other's entries, right? Because it's redundant, going backwards. And I disagree. Having your due diligence to write something in retroactively is due diligence. So if the birthplace is being referencing to be born should be also referencing to birthplace, regardless if it's going to show up later or it shows up before. That's, in my opinion, is due diligence. If you're a resource, being redundant is important. Memory can be choppy anywhere. Assuming everyone is constantly going in a forward direction because your system is made to go in a forward direction is, I think, presumptuous. And it doesn't help. In my opinion, it doesn't have a safety net, right? And I think I'm also seeing that in Anse Hero as well, where I would be retroactively adding synonyms. And I think a large amount of the criticism deals with that too. What happens when you start knowing more things, and then there are things that are like choppy in between, right? So this is actually forward. I'm pretty sure umade, or umadi, or actually, see, now I'm not even sure because I'm not referring to it. Birthplace. Oh, it's umade, not umari. Oh, right. So it does hold on to umade. Right. And then when you click on umade, it's gonna say, remember how you learned that umareru means to be born? Well, once you're born, that place where it happened becomes your birthplace, right? Well, this does mention that in a forward direction, but it doesn't mention it in a reverse direction. So in SRS, if you got umareru, it's up to you to think of the birthplace. But if the first time you remember this thing has no reference to birthplace, and you get it wrong, reinforcing that it's related to birthplace is useful retroactively. Is it worth noting there? I would think so. Since you have no way of referring to the endings of a word. So we'll think about that. That's something I will be doing in the future, I guess. And then let's do these last 6 reviews because it's after 9 now. Brainstorming.
Shibou.
People.
取る、
取る、
したい、
したい、
死ぬ
Oh, we have a lesson? Oh, okay. Let's do the lesson too. Floor is floor. Yuka is still Yuka. Pretty
床、
sure. Yuka.
床
Yeah, so sometimes they do. Sometimes they do. So this, right, you look at the disgusting floor. So they repeat it when it's exactly the same. Floor is floor, which is still floor, and they wrote. So not everything is, not saying that everything is missing. I don't think it's all or none, right? But they do repeat for some of them. And those one actually stay really well, in my opinion. Probably. Whoops. I totally skipped over image. Ega. Ega. So this is ga. Image. You go down the street. Okay, I see the street. That cuts through the rice paddy and leads to a box. When you open the box at the end of the street, you see it's full of images. Image after image. Drawing, painting, you name it. Okay. Someone must have left this box of images here. What are the images of it? Anyway. What are the images of anyway? Well, it's better not to say out loud. Just think of the kind of image you enjoy looking at most. That's what's in the box at the end of the street. Aren't you the lucky one? Yeah. Ga Haku. Oh no. We're thinking about roosters again. Okay. I didn't want to tell you this, but the images are all drawings and paintings of gargoyles and kakus. Male chickens, that is. Turns out what you wanted to see turns out that's what you wanted to see. No, don't worry, no one is judging you. Try to see the images of the gargoyles. Ga for gargoyle. Okay. Ega would be the ga. Ga. I don't think I have this character yet. But it's still Zol. Okay. Ga Zol. Ega. Ega-kan. Right. Okay.
Yuka.
Alright. That's a wrap. Not bad. Not bad. A bit of a triggering point, but I'm all too familiar with WaniKani's design. Now, it did get shifted to 5 and 6, so that's pretty good for tomorrow's schedule. Actually, all right, that's a wrap for WaniKani today. We had a bit of discussion today, right? What was it? Oh, I think the most relevant kanji stuff was it's because Gecko shared his Spanish background and French background with Duolingo. So we'll get to that soon enough. That's the end of our Japanese session. If you're gonna watch this later, arigatou gozaimasu, right? It would be interesting to hear what other people think about or workarounds on how they group predicates together. Duolingo grouped them largely based on their conjugation and actually testing them as groups. So like umare would be next to umareru, which would be next to nama, which would be next to namabiru, next to ikiru. So all of them would be like, you would have 5 choices on the left and 5 choices on the right, and all 5 of the choices would have something to do with that character. That's kind of how Duolingo goes about it. WaniKani does not. So their notes, in my opinion, should reinforce that redundancy. If they don't, then I will probably add it as a form of due diligence. So when I make the mistake, I'm not necessarily going to spend 10 minutes going through the hoops in trying to figure out where the mnemonic is. The alternative, obviously, in an ideal world, is rote memory. You can remember the differences, and therefore they are different. That's probably the take home of my last 30 minutes trying to figure out what am I going to do. I'm probably going to group them together. We'll take the problem characters and we'll go over the cycle. So in the future, when a predicate shows up on here, in the beginning of every routine, I'm going to go to the predicate, look at the character, and I'm going to go down through the vocabulary quickly and see all the different versions so I can get a grasp of the extent of these characters as a morning routine or as a beginning routine, right? And if they exist by the end, which they shouldn't, if they exist by the end, we'll continue to do it. So from now on, that's what we're going to do. We're going to go through, and if it's a predicate, I'm going to do this exercise where I go through and look at all the predicates, group them together in my head, and see if that will help solidify the differences in the predicates. I think this is a weak spot that is not part of the lesson and the reviews, but it's a weak spot in terms of the way it's laid out for myself. Hello there, Sub-Zero. So we're going to switch gears now. For those who are only interested in Japanese, right? Minasan, mata ne, right? See you next time. I'm going to get up, go to take a quick bathroom break, stretch a little bit, and I'll be back for Hanzo Hero. Thank you.